So you have that background in sports,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously you said you started off in hip hop, and then you transitioned over to sports.
Yeah.
Um, with over 50, I think you have over 50 million views on YouTube, probably across other platforms and then other YouTube channels, probably a lot more than that when you talk Twitter and just your peer-to-peer podcast, all that. But when did you feel like you went from being just a regular YouTuber to someone who has actually had some level of success at this and you just much bigger than just your everyday YouTuber?
Much bigger. I don't know. I don't know.
Nah,
Because
nah, nah, nah.
I
Don't
still
be
don't feel
nah.
like
Don't be
on
humble.
there.
No.
And I don't know if it's necessarily humble just because I surround myself with people who are like even big, like much bigger than me. So I see them and I'm like, no, those are crazy. But I think a lot of it started transitioning when I made the decision to be more personality based, show my face a little bit more, because crazy enough on my main channel, on the Legend of Winning channel, I don't show my face, and even to this day, I still don't show my face. It's just commentary over highlights or infographics, and so yeah, I think there was always a disconnect from the audience to me because they never was able to see me, which I still think is fine. I think it helps them gravitate more to the information. But as soon as I made the transition to be more on camera, so people actually saw my face, which crazy enough has only been for like a year and a half, 2 years now. Is often as people like see me on camera now. This is not. I have not been doing this for that long, so I think that's when the transition really was like noticeable because I was way more identifiable. And then even beyond my basketball takes on my second channel, even like you said on peer to peer, which is the podcast, and then playback, which is kind of the more opinionated version of me beyond sports, and then AMP videos. Like I think that was when I was just way more identifiable, especially like me walking outside and like people saying, "Hey, yo, I see you," da 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 da. So it was probably about 2 years ago. I think I was still doing very, very well up until that point, but where it was like kind of like really hard to deny it. Yeah, probably it started being like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
That man, that's what I said. You gotta understand your own growth and where you
Yeah.
came from, how you got to where you are now, and then obviously you still growing because now I've seen you on other growing podcasts. Obviously, Players Choice. I love what they're doing over there.
Yeah.
With the different types of debates and just NBA takes that they have on a lot of different topics over there. You have playback and you have your peer to peer podcast. Now, when we talk about, let's start with playback.
Okay.
Okay, the content over there. What is the angle with regards to that channel? Is it just sports? I mean, is it kind of all over the place? Like where did you intend for that channel to go?
Playback is really just where me and my co-host or good friend of my agent, we just want to voice our opinion and give our perspective on certain aspects of things. It's not necessarily, it don't have to be particular sports. But there is a conversation, like an ongoing conversation on the internet that's happening right now. We're dealing with men and women in the relationships that they're in, I guess the manosphere, the red pill. But like those, it's just really our perspective on ongoing topics that is happening on the internet. So sometimes it may spill over into sports. We talked about LeBron's son and stuff like that, or sometimes it may spill over into relationships. But the key purpose of it is for people to just kind of hear a different perspective and hear our opinion on certain aspects of the internet that kind of goes back and forth or at least trendy. I guess trendy is a better word for it.
And that I'm glad you brought that up with agent because I think a lot of people also want to know how did that, because that pairing seems perfect. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you guys kind of work seamlessly with one another. You play off one another very well. It works well, whether it's visually on camera or you just listening and you hear the audio. It sounds like you guys were kind of made to be partnered together. Regardless of what type of content you're doing. How did that pairing happen? How did you guys meet?
So crazy enough, it was sports though. He had a basketball podcast that he used to run a while ago, called AO Podcast, and he was running it with a few other YouTubers at the time, who were in the 2K space more so. And at the time, they needed they needed a thumbnail. They needed a thumbnail, an ongoing thumbnail for what they were doing. So I decided to take it upon myself because I was just a listener at that time. I decided to take it upon myself. I'll just make them a thumbnail and, you know, make nothing much of it. And I made them a thumbnail. They liked it enough to at least use it for an episode or two. And so because of that, the transaction was, hey, we'll feature you on one of the podcasts. And, you know, the story gets told differently from one person, but from the next. But I believe that I was a good enough guest to where they kept inviting me. But then their version of it is I just kept showing up and they were like, we're not going to tell him to go anywhere. So that's how we got introduced to one another. And I think I was just opinionated and had enough to say about basketball to where they kind of kept me on because everybody else didn't keep the same energy. And I think at the time it was respectful enough to where like I wasn't like, you know, boisterous about it, but still can keep the conversation going. And then we kind of just pivot from that to having ongoing conversations off cam about, you know, YouTube and trying to figure things out with the algorithm and spending endless hours. Back then it wasn't Discord or StreamYard. Back then it was Skype. Spent endless hours on Skype just trying to figure things out. And I think that right there is what really gravitated us together, was just the constant dedication to trying to figure out how to do better on YouTube and how we can just speak about that through endless amount of hours. And then going from that to pivoting into like my own content and him doing his own content, occasionally being featured on his content, playing 2K from time to time. But I think a lot of it is just like endless hours of conversations of kind of just knowing how we talk, the cadence, and knowing when to stop, listen. And I mean, and to be fair enough as well, I think, like you said before, it's always nice to have somebody around you with like a common sense understanding of how the world works. Like you sitting here going back and forth trying to debate core fundamental flaws, you know, of course that may seem fun, but I don't think it would have breeded the relationship that we have right now.